Hello my lovely people, welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to do a similar video to, I don't know if you guys seen, but my video which was named something like the Sydney struggle, my honest opinion. And I want to do a similar video today because it's been about, I think, 7 months since I did that video. But it just feels like in such a short space of time, like the world has changed a lot. I've really felt a shift. I don't know if you guys kind of believe in that kind of stuff, but yeah, it kind of felt right to do another video talking about living in Sydney. A lot of my recent videos were me traveling, so you would have seen different parts of the world. But as I am living in Sydney, that's kind of how I started this channel, like filming my realistic life in Sydney. I was like, let's touch base and talk about it. So as you would have just seen, my little morning routine. So my morning routine kind of looks similar like most days, even when I am working. Now, look, Sydney is beautiful, okay? So the way I'm going to talk about it in this video really is a realistic point of view if you are coming to actually live long term in Sydney. So I'm talking as someone that has moved from England to Sydney, and also someone that actually has lived in other parts of Australia. So when I first came to Australia, I actually landed in Brisbane and I spent my first couple months living around the Gold Coast and in the Gold Coast. So yeah, I have experience of living in different parts of Australia, and also moving from another country. So the way I talk about Sydney right now is genuinely just a realistic point of view from someone that has moved to Sydney and lives in Sydney with not like crazy amounts of money. So if you're someone living in Sydney with like loads of money, or you're just like backpacking and just passing through, this like might not be as relatable as someone who's watching this who is living probably like the majority of us in Sydney right now with just like average amount of money, average job, and just trying to get by. So the reason I mention that, tying it into my morning routine, is because Sydney is beautiful, okay? Sydney is absolutely stunning and it has some stunning beaches. So some mornings I may just like wake up, get dressed and leave straight away and go and have my coffee like on the beach, and it's stunning. And a big thing to do is like a lot of people will get up and go watch like sunrise on the beach with their morning coffee and then go work out after and then go to work or whatever, which we'll get into that. But the reason I say this video is more for people actually trying to like live in Sydney, and is working hard and don't have like so much money that they don't have to maybe like work as hard as some other people, is because not every morning is gonna necessarily look like that, okay? And it can look like that for the average person, of course it can. If you want to make that time in the morning to get up and go and watch sunrise with your coffee and work out before work or before like 9 o'clock or whatever time you start, you can do that. Of course you can do what you want. But realistically, you know, people get tired and you go through different stages of life where maybe the motivation is not quite there to get up and do that every morning. And I think because Sydney is so just like known for coastal walks, sunrise with a coffee and friends on the beach, like all smiling, and like when you think of Sydney, you think of like people putting up posts and with like the different pictures of like just like looking really happy with everyone, like smiling and drinking coffee on the beach watching the sunrise. You know, you know what I'm talking about. You see that a lot on Instagram, which yes, I've definitely posted stuff like that because it is beautiful and you can have great times. But it's not reality all the time, okay? People get run down, they get tired, they get drained, just trying to get by. And so what I would say is, if you are actually living in Sydney, do not feel guilty, on the mornings that you don't get up and go and do that. You do not have to do that every morning, and that is okay. So like my morning today was waking up, having my coffee, and yes, sometimes I do go straight out the door and I will go and do a really nice walk. But some days I don't, and most days recently I haven't been, if I'm to be totally honest, because I've been feeling so tired from work. And I have stuff to do around the apartment as well. So I woke up, have my coffee. I will try and sit on the balcony and have my coffee so I get some sunlight and sun. But then I had I put a wash on, tidied up a bit, put clothes away, and then went and did my workout, which you will see I do it from my garage still. I do actually have a video on why I work out from my garage instead of the gym, so I'm not going to get into that now. And yeah, so my morning didn't look like the kind of Instagrammable morning you see people post of living in Sydney, and that is absolutely okay. As I mentioned, a lot of people you see in Sydney are also just passing through. So of course they're gonna get up and make the most of the limited time that they have in Sydney, and do sunrise with coffee, beach walks, coastal walks, all of that kind of stuff. I'm sure how your life looked when you first arrived in Australia is very different to how it looks now. So you shouldn't be comparing yourself to how other people are living their kind of Sydney life, because everyone's at different stages. And yes, that is so true, because people talk about not comparing because you're in different stages of life, which is true. But when you're living abroad, and especially in Australia / Sydney, there's so much other stuff you're thinking of. You're thinking of visa. Visa is such a big one. Farm work that you have to leave and then come back, blah blah blah. Finding yourself an apartment, finding yourself a job, there's so much things to think about. So when you are living abroad, and I'm talking about now in Sydney, do not compare where you're at to other people and how your morning looks to other people, because everyone's at different stages of their journey, living out here. So yeah, and I always think about it, right? When you lived back at home and you were exhausted from work, you would just use your day off to lie in and get washing done and stuff, and you wouldn't think twice. That was kind of how you just spent your day, and everyone spent their days like that. And it was just the norm that when you have a day off, you're sleeping in, you're catching up on sleep, and you're doing your washing, your grocery shop, and that's normal. But there's something about living in Sydney that when it's your day off, you feel a bit of pressure, to be going and doing something and still getting up early, because you've got to make the most of your time here. And if it's sunny, you've got to get out and use every second of your day outside, because you need to make the most of the sun. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm getting at? So it's this thing where as soon as you get into Sydney, you're in this little bubble, and you kind of feel you've got to live totally different to how you did back at home, just because you feel it's what everyone else is doing. And I'm here to tell you, please do not feel like that. It's just not realistic. It does go in a loop, because at the same time I see a lot of people struggle with their mental health, and it becomes a thing when people move here, because maybe they don't know many people, and there's just a lot of extra stress from moving to another country. So in that situation, I would say it is so important to get out and get outside, and try and just be around people. But what I was getting at there is when you, for example, I've been here for 7 years, my life's gonna look very different out here to someone that's just arrived here. So at the same time, if you're drained from work, do not feel the pressure to constantly be trying to fill your days off, because you need to relax and catch up on normal like life and life admin as well. So, you know, use your brain, do what's right for you, and it depends what season of life you're at. And yeah, so that was something I wanted to touch upon first. Sorry if that was a bit rambly, but I hope you guys know where I was getting at there. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is apartment living in Sydney. And I think, again, when you think of moving to Australia, you imagine being in this stunning, like, modern apartment, big glass, like, balcony, like, looking out to the sea, the beach. And you kind of think of your life in Sydney and Australia as just complete bliss. I don't know, like, you just imagine you move and you just straight away live in this stunning apartment looking out onto the beach. And it can be like that. It can definitely be like that, guys. But again, if you are living realistically on a budget, it's probably not going to look like that, because they're going to be very, very expensive. Unless you, a lot of people, what they do actually is they will get a big place with like a pool and stuff and split the rent between like quite a lot of people, and then you can kind of live in like an amazing place. But if you kind of have done that and you don't want to live with like loads of people, and you're kind of getting like a 2-bed place or like a studio place, it can get quite expensive. So you have to be prepared to kind of accept that like a lot of apartments around Sydney are quite old looking. And there's something about the bathrooms in Sydney, they always have like crazy funky colors going on. Like my bathroom is very old school and it's like bright blue, and it's not the nicest, but you know, it's kind of like you've got to accept that it's an expensive place, and if you want to be able to afford to live here, you have to look at it realistically. You can't be spending all of your income just on rent, because you need to be able to afford bills, food, and still be able to afford to go out and enjoy yourself. So the apartment I live in is pretty old, but it's fine. It does the job, and you can do it up and make it look good as well. But yeah, you have to accept that a lot of the apartments in Sydney are pretty old, and you have to be okay with that. If you've made the decision to move to Sydney and you don't have much money, then what do you expect? Do you know what I mean? And pretty much everything in this apartment is like secondhand as well. So you have to be okay with that when you first move, and even down the line. Like I said, I've lived in Australia 7 years now. It's been like I've moved around a lot and stuff. So I would say since being settled, it's probably been about I want to say somewhere between like 3 and 4 years really, that I've actually just been in Sydney working and living in this apartment. But everything we got when we moved into this apartment is secondhand, and most stuff I buy for the apartment will be like secondhand or just cheap stuff. And I think, again, if you're gonna make the decision to live in Sydney and you're trying to save money or you don't earn much, you have to be okay with that. And again, the reason I think myself personally has done that is because until you get like your permanent residency visa, it's never really permanent. And I think that's always in the back of your head when you're living here. Like if you don't have permanent residency, in the back of your head, you know it's not permanent until you get that. So it's just something I've always felt more comfortable doing, is just still making the apartment look nice and like homely and cozy, but just getting secondhand stuff. So if I did have to get up and move, I'm okay with just getting rid of it, you know, chucking it if needs be. And it just makes, I don't know, I just prefer to live that way until things feel permanent. I don't know if anyone else feels the same. Because that's the other thing, when you're renting, like you could just get an email one day that you need to move out, so you kind of don't want to be arriving straight away and buying all these new things and kitting out the apartment, because it's not permanent until it's permanent, you know. And especially if you've got to go off and do your farm work and stuff like that, personally I don't think there's any point spending loads of money on all new furniture and stuff, because you probably will at some point have to get up and leave, and you may not be able to bring everything with you. Like, you don't know if you want to like move out of Sydney and try a different part of Australia. So if we're talking about like when you first arrive, I would just, yeah, take it slow, suss it out first, get secondhand stuff until you really know it's permanent. Like, it's like anything, you have to like build your way up, and you have to accept that if you're gonna move to Sydney slash Australia, it's gonna probably be a slower process than it would back at home, because not only are you thinking about like saving to get a house and stuff, you've got to think about like your visa first of all, more than anything, because you can't start going down the housing route until you have the permanent. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you've just gotta build your way up and be okay with starting from the bottom. Living in an apartment, maybe that wouldn't be like your first pick. Buying secondhand stuff, cheaper stuff, and you have to be okay with it if you're going to make the decision to move here, and kind of try and build yourself a life here. Because again, if I'm tying it back to like what I first said about not feeling pressure to every morning get up for sunrise and fill your days off full of like different activities and stuff, like I definitely did that for a long time of living in Australia. It's not till the past like year or so that I stopped doing that as much. The problem with that, and I feel like this happens in Sydney, is again, it goes back to a lot of people are kind of just like passing through Sydney, and they're here for like limited time and they don't plan on staying here forever. So they kind of come here and get like everything out of their system and just enjoy it, which I do not blame them. I have been there and done it. But then us people that are trying to like make a life here and stuff, sometimes again, that's just not, it's not realistic, because at the same time, if you're gonna decide to try and stay here and live, you need to start thinking about saving money and thinking about next steps in life. So be okay with taking a bit of time out for yourself. And yeah, I guess there's nothing wrong. You can have fun, but also think like realistically sometimes, and think about how you kind of see your future. And don't let other people sway that, because there's something about the Sydney bubble where it feels like time kind of stands still and age isn't really a thing, and you just kind of do the same thing every weekend with your mates, which is so fun, and you can still have fun as you get older. But I do think it gets to a point where you're like, shit, like where has the time gone? Like, I need to actually think about being an adult. Do you know what I mean? And those people that are just kind of like passing through and having fun, they'll go back home and they'll settle down and they'll start making that life for themselves. So if you're planning to stay here and live, put yourself first when it comes to that kind of stuff, and think, no, like I actually need to think practically right now, and where do I see my future? I hope that makes sense. And I think the people who have lived in Sydney for a long time and came from like other countries will see what I'm trying to say there. And whilst you take time for yourself and you are kind of like living cheaply for a bit in an older apartment, or like buying secondhand stuff, doing a job that maybe you didn't really do back at home, but visa's situation gets in the way, or you've just not quite found your thing yet in terms of like jobs, don't let other people's comments get to you too much, okay? Because you know what you're doing, and you know the journey it's taken to get to where you are, and you know how hard it is trying to build a life for yourself coming from another country and building up from scratch. Like, At work, I've had comments about what I'm doing. I literally had someone come in the other day and literally just say to me, when are you going to get a real job? And I laugh around with this guy, but I don't feel like I'm on that level for him to kind of say that. And I kind of just said to him, what do you mean? And he was like, you've taken the easy way out, you have. Something like that. It was something like that. And then just walked away. Seriously, I was just thinking, why would you even say that to someone you don't really know? Like, what makes you, who walks into a place, sees the girl on the reception desk and even says that? One, wouldn't even think to say that to the person. And two, even if I was thinking that, I'm not gonna tell them that. Very bizarre, especially when you are out there working. You know, there's people that don't work, who do take the easy way out. So I just thought that was a really weird thing to just come in and say. But look, I guess if you see it from a different side, maybe he sees more potential in me, which is fine, that's okay. But at the same time, I don't think some people realize how hard it is trying to build yourself a life when you have things like visa situations to think about first, and just trying to like pay the bills and rent and figuring out what you actually want to do in life. Like, there's a lot more stuff that comes into it. So firstly, don't make comments like that anyway to other people. And secondly, if you're thinking that and you kind of want to know more about this person, at least ask them questions first. Ask them first, do you enjoy your job? What makes you, like, why are you here doing this job? Before you just straight out say, when are you going to get a real job? What even is a real job these days, especially? I think as well, a lot of older people make comments like that because I feel like it is very different right now, and I do think a lot of stuff has got tougher and more expensive, and I'm not sure that some older people appreciate that and understand that it's a bit of a different time right now, and us youngsters are trying to work really, really hard. And especially in customer service, we're dealing with people that have got a lot harder to deal with. So trust me, I have not taken the easy way out. But yeah, you just have to ignore little comments like that because you know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it. And also what I would say to that is nothing has to be permanent. I've tried loads of different things. I've lived in lots of different parts of Australia, and what keeps me going is knowing that nothing is permanent. And if you do want to make a change, then you can. I'm not in a job that I see myself in long term, but right now in my situation, I'm okay with that. The same with this apartment. I don't see myself living here full time. I'm okay with that. And you have to be okay with accepting that the situation you are in right now is potentially not permanent. It doesn't have to be permanent, it's temporary, and you're earning the money, you're getting the experience to be able to be where you want to be in the future, if that makes sense. And that can go for wherever you're living, and if you're living in your hometown or whatever. But I think particularly when you move away, you have to be okay with like the unknown and not knowing where you're going to be in an X amount of time, and knowing that it's not permanent again until it is, and being okay with that and seeing it as exciting. Like, you've already made that big step of moving abroad and you're building up that life, and who knows what the future is going to be, but see it as exciting more than anything. So I'm not going to get into too much of living in Sydney because I did talk about it in my other Sydney video and I have done a podcast on it. So I will link below those two where I get into actual Sydney life a little bit more. So I'll link them below in the bio so you guys can head over to that if you want to hear a little bit more. But something I'll touch upon as well is just like safety in Sydney. And this really ties into like realistic life in Sydney. So again, when you think of moving to Australia, you think of it being very, very safe, which compared to a lot of countries, it is very safe. But you have to remember, especially when you're living in Sydney, it is still just another city full of lots and lots of different types of people, different backgrounds, different cultures. Some really are mentally unwell. So in the area that I live in, it's and this is where a lot of people come and live, by the way. Like a lot of English and Irish are living in this area, and there's hospital and there's a mental hospital nearby. So in the area I'm living in, there is a lot of mentally unstable people walking around, and there's a lot of homeless as well. And I don't say that in any type of disrespectful way or to offend anyone, but there truly is. And you know, some of these homeless people, they keep themselves to themselves, but there's others where they just scream at everyone walking by. There's one guy in particular, and he's quite scary. He like screams at people, and he's very angry. I was actually on a run a while back, and I had my headphones on, so I was in my own little world. And then there was this older couple walking towards me as I was running, and I kind of thought, it seems like they're trying to get my attention, but I kind of just ignored them because I was in my own little bubble, like running, like so tired. And then I realized, no, they are trying to get my attention. So I took out my AirPods and I was like, yeah, confused. And then they were like, don't go that way. There's a guy screaming at people. He's very angry. Do not run that way. And I looked up, and I'm glad they stopped me, because I was about to run right past him. And it was that guy just screaming and shouting at people. But he does it in a really violent, angry way. And because he is just always around. I've seen him a lot. I actually walked by him on my way to work, and let me finish this story and then I'll get back to that one that I was going to say. But yeah, and I was literally about to run by him, and at that time when I looked up after they told me, he was shouting at me. So I just turned around and ran back the way I'd came instead of doing the loop I normally would. And the time I was about to say was, I was walking to work one day and it was raining and I had my umbrella up. So I'm short-sighted, so I couldn't see clearly what he was doing, but I just know he was on the same side of the pavement that I had to walk to cross and get to work. So I had to walk directly past him, and people were looking at him, but he wasn't shouting this time. So I was like, I don't know, I'm just gonna still carry on like walking past him to get to work. And I realized he had everything out down here, and he was just standing against the wall in front of everyone, weeing. And I saw everything, which was not nice, but I couldn't tell what he was doing, and I was like squinting, like looking, because I didn't have my glasses on. And then I seen it, and he was just standing there weeing against the wall in front of everyone and all the cars and everything. So you have to remember, it's a city, so you know there's a lot of people with unpredictable behaviors, and a lot of homeless people still. And yeah, if you again are living realistically like most of us with not all the money in the world, then the parts of Sydney you'll most likely live, there will be those types of people walking around as you get anywhere and in any city. So safety compared to a lot of places I've been is fantastic, and the police are great. Like, you know, I can't fault Australia. They do a really great job at protecting us and trying to limit crime, but you do get the odd unpredictable people behaviors, and there is still crime. So you still just have to stay alert, just like what happened tragically in Bondi Junction like a year or two ago, where that guy just lashed out, and yeah, I don't know what I can say on YouTube, but where the guy lashed out in Bondi Junction, you'll know the story. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you'll know what I'm talking about. So you still have to be careful. But as a whole, safety in Sydney is a lot better than other parts of the world. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna leave this one here. As I mentioned, I will link below in the bio my other video where I talk about like living in Sydney probably a little bit more in depth, and I'll also link the podcast episode where I talk about it a little bit more. This one I didn't really want to like go over things I'd already spoken about, and I just wanted to just talk about a few little things that were in my head as I was doing my morning routine. So yeah, remember, your Sydney life isn't always going to look like what you see on social media. Don't feel pressure to move to Sydney and live your life drastically differently to how you do back at home. You're still living a normal life, you know, it's not gonna be sunshine and roses every day, and you don't have to jam pack your day every day. Be okay with, you know, living in a place that you didn't think you might see yourself in, but you know, it's short term, it's temporary, you're saving money, it's fine. You know, be okay with buying secondhand stuff. You don't need to splash out on all of this new furniture and stuff when you don't even know if your journey here, you don't even know if your life here is permanent right now. No matter how many years down the track it is of you living here, it's not permanent until it's permanent. But still enjoy yourself, guys. And safety, as I said, is much better than other parts of the world, but you are still living in a city full of lovely people, but also people that are very unpredictable. So you still have to stay vigilant and take care of yourself. But I'm gonna love you guys. I'm gonna leave you. I'm gonna go and have some lunch now, and I am gonna get myself outside and go on a walk since I haven't done that yet. And I try and get outside most days, because I do think that's important, but don't feel like you have to do it at sunrise or sunset. You can go out and get your steps in at any time of the day. Just because you see sunrise steps on Instagram doesn't mean that's when you have to go out and do your steps. You do your day, whatever works for you. Anyway, gonna love you guys and leave you, and I'll speak to you soon.